Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and Jewish heroes come in all sizes. Very often, they walk among us without our ever even noticing them. But during their lifetime, they've been at pivotal events in Jewish history, have done heroic things, and have made lasting contributions to the overall good of the Jewish community. And on this edition of L'Chaim, I have the enormous privilege to be sitting with just such a man. It is my honor to introduce to you Moshe Avital, who as a young teenager survived Auschwitz and a 4-week-long death march, who was liberated at Buchenwald, and then chose to take part in Aliyah Bet, the illegal Jewish immigration to Palestine in defiance of the British blockade. What happened to Moshe from the moment he boarded a rickety ship renamed Yaldei Buchenwald, since the first portion of its passenger list was all children of Buchenwald? What happened to him from the moment the Yaldei Buchenwald pushed off toward Palestine through the succeeding years that placed him at some of the most dramatic events in the early life of the State of Israel? On this edition of L'Chaim, we'll get to hear Moshe's wonderful, fascinating story. And Moshe Avital, it is such an honor and pleasure to have you sitting at this table. Thank you for joining us on JBS.
It's my pleasure.
By the way, I want to tell you a little bit about what Moshe Avital has done since his early years in Israel. He speaks a dozen languages. He's been a frequent translator. He's translated 10 ancient Hebrew Kabbalah books into English. He was the official translator from Hebrew to English for ABC during the proceedings of Anwar Sadat's historic visit to Israel, the proceedings in the Israeli parliament in November 1977, and later during the press conference in Alexandria, Egypt, and during Prime Minister Begin's trip to Egypt. He's devoted his life to Jewish education and served for many years as the Director of Education and Culture at the Jewish Agency for Israel, its America section. Moshe is also the author of many books, including a fabulous book on the Holocaust, Not to Forget, Impossible to Forgive, Poignant Reflections on the Holocaust by Dr. Moshe Avital. And There Was Courage, stories of Jewish valor and heroism during and after the Shoah, and then a book of Jewish philosophy, The Failure of Man and the Enigma of God's Silence. He is also credited with having contributed to just a fabulous photographic collection known as the Auschwitz Album, a book based upon an album discovered by a concentration camp survivor at Auschwitz named Lily Mirror, who wrote the text here, and Moshe is credited for having told the story of his hometown of Bilka. That is also part of the story. And Moshe, the very first photograph in this collection,
Yes.
is a picture of
Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Weiss, the rabbi of our hometown.
the actual rabbi from Moshe's hometown. And it's a fabulous, fabulous book. What's the story behind this book?
This Lillian, she was taken to Auschwitz like all of us, and she was 17 years old. She was in Auschwitz until the day when Auschwitz was evacuated, when everybody was taken on a death march,
Including you.
Well, I didn't come from Auschwitz under that march. I came from another camp.
I see.
Yeah. She was among about 400 very sick people that the Germans left in Auschwitz, which is an enigma in itself. And the Russians came in and they treated them. After a couple of weeks, she started to roam around in the camp, and she went into one of the SS barracks, and she opened up a chest of drawers, and she saw an album, opened up the first page, and she saw the picture of the rabbi of our hometown. And then further on, she saw the picture of her two brothers who were twins, who were experimented by Mengele, and they didn't survive. She saw a picture of her grandmother and many other people from our hometown. As far as we know, this is the only transport that was photographed by the Germans. And so she took the album, she came to America, and she settled in Miami. And for 35 years, she kept this album to herself and didn't tell anybody. Her husband was joking with her. He was saying, "You are going to die and nobody will even know that such an album exists." So she decided to do something. She called Peter Hellman, who was a Jewish writer, and he asked her questions about the hometown and all that, but she didn't know too much. She gave him my telephone number. He came to my house, and for hours he sat with me, and I gave him the whole history of the town. And the album was published.
In 1981, I believe.
Yeah. These are many, many pictures that you see Mengele and the lineup of the people and the candidate commando and all these different, and of course the different groups, women and children and all that. And 3 years ago, Yad Vashem published it in Hebrew.
Amazing. Is it available for Americans to?
Yes, there is there's a publishing company here. It was published by Random House.
It's still available?
Yes.
Okay, that is wonderful. You know about the Dachau album?
Yes.
How do you know about it?
I saw it on your program.
It is also an extraordinary
Right,
piece
it
of
is.
work.
It's a fascinating story.
Yes, and Avi Hoffman is trying to work that and create an exhibit of that. So the Auschwitz album precedes it in terms of publication. It's really wonderful to have seen it, and I appreciate you bringing it to me. I've already told your story many times, and one of the things that people have said to me is the most difficult thing to believe. It's incredible that anybody survived the death camps at all. But to survive the march, the death march, I asked you then, but I'm going to ask you again, as you reflect upon it. First of all, I'm correct, it was about a 4-week-long march, correct?
It was 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
Yes.
You did get to rest at night.
Well, it wasn't really rest because we didn't have places to lie down. We were crowded in like sardines together in barns and in schools. The only good thing about that we were so crowded, because it was winter, it was very cold, and we were able to warm ourselves. The bodies were warming one another.
Okay.
So we sort of resting during the night.
Okay. I ask you again, how in the world, you also said, how many left? About 10,000?
From 10,000 left Bolkenheim concentration camp.
And how many reached?
400
Only
reached
400.
Buchenwald.
So you were one of the 400 who survived.
Yes.
Out of 10,000.
Right.
And I asked you then, I'm going to ask you again, as you think back on it, Moshe, how did any of the 400 of you survive? How did you survive?
Well, let me tell you, if it would have lasted another couple of days, I wouldn't be here today. Because when we arrived in Buchenwald, I was completely emaciated, hungry because we didn't get food. We were eating snow on the way to Buchenwald. And it was sheer determination. I had this very strong will to survive, that I'll be able to tell what happened. And also I felt somebody has to survive from our family. And that gave me courage to go on. Although there were times that I myself also asked to die when I saw how the guards were shooting people that couldn't keep up with the march.
What do you mean you asked to die?
I was praying to God and said, I can't go on. I would rather die than see these scenes.
God wouldn't let you die.
No.
Did you have any friends on this march, or were you totally alone? I don't mean did you know someone. I meant, was there someone you were with?
At the end, there was nobody.
How about at the beginning?
In the beginning, there were a couple of young boys like me from my hometown, but they perished on the way.
Do you remember their perishing?
Yes.
Did they die because they just dropped from exhaustion?
No,
or were they shot?
They were shot.
Why?
Because they couldn't keep up with the march.
So you had to see your friends shot
Yes.
to death.
Yes.
You told the story of heroism.
Yeah.
Tell the story again of the man who stepped forward. You don't even know if it was the right man, but
Right.
tell that story.
One of the SS guards gave his backpack to one of the prisoners to carry it for him. The prisoner, after a while, opened up the backpack and he saw that there was food. So he took out the food and he ate as much as he could and he gave out to the people around him. After a while, the guard was looking for the prisoner. He wanted back his backpack, but he couldn't recognize him because all of us looked alike. We were all wearing the same uniforms. We were all emaciated. We were covered up with snow because the snow was coming down very heavily, and he just couldn't find him. So he went over to the commandant who was leading the march, and he told him what happened. And the commandant stopped the column, and he announced that whoever took it should come forward right away. Nobody moved. And then again, he announced again, and nobody moved. None of us knew who he was. And even if we would have known, we wouldn't have told, because there was this dilemma among us that we wanted to help one another. We have, in Judaism, we have this credo that says that
Every Jew is responsible for each other.
for another, yes. Kol Yisrael arevin ze lazeh.
Nachon.
And so then the commandant announced that if within 2 minutes the one that took the backpack does not come forward, every 10th person is going to be shot. The 2 minutes passed, and they started to line up every 10th person in a line. And just before they were about to start executing these people, a prisoner came forward, and he said, I was the one who did it. And the commandant asked him why. He said, I was very hungry, and I ate it. So he took out his pistol, and he shot him, and threw him to the side of the road. And then we marched on. And all this time, we were thinking whether it was really the right one who did it, but we assumed that no. That must have been somebody that volunteered in order to save so many hundreds of Jews.
An amazing story.
Yeah.
I also have told you, it's so hard for those of us who only hear these stories, we were not there, to really understand what you experienced. And I want to just see if I understand this correctly. When you say 10,000, is that your way of saying there were many, or do you believe there were 10,000?
There were 10,000 because it was the entire camp. There were only 10,000 in this camp.
Okay. I want people to understand the enormity of that number. if there are people who've gone to a baseball game, you go to Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium roughly holds 40,000 people. Imagine 25% of the people in a full Yankee Stadium are then told they're going to march together. 25% of Yankee Stadium, a full Yankee Stadium, everybody there is going to march somewhere together. Now, Moshe, how did you march? Did you march single file, 10 abreast? Did you have to keep, in formation? Or was it 10,000 people who were sort of just walking along, and here there were 7, and here there were 10, and then there were 5, and as long as you didn't straggle or you didn't fall down, you were left alone. But it wasn't an army march of 10,000 people in a column following behind the guy in front of him, was it?
It wasn't not like an army march.
It was or was not?
It was. There were 5 abreast.
Yes.
And it was a big column. And the SS were on both sides of the column with machine guns. And if you just stepped out from your row a little bit, they shot you.
So there's 2,000 rows?
Whatever it was.
2,000 rows?
Yes. It was a long column, very long.
And that's the other thing. So how could anybody speak to all of you at one time? If you're at the head of the column of 2,000 rows of 5, or you're at the back, how do you in the back have a clue what's going on in front?
What happened was that was already later on, when many were shot already.
It wasn't 10,000 anymore.
No, not anymore. No.
Is it fair to say that if you had not been there, it would be hard for you to imagine as well?
Of course. I'll tell you, many times when I think back what I went through, I myself sometimes cannot believe that I went through these things.
Moshe, was there ever a tender moment in the camp for you where somebody did something lovely for you?
Not in the camp. Actually, yes. It wasn't this, not in the camp itself, but it was when I was in this camp. I was working in an airplane factory in Breslau, 12 hours each shift, 1 week daytime, 1 week nighttime. And we marched from the camp to this factory. There was a German foreman who was a civilian who was limping, and I don't know whether he was born like that or he was wounded in the war, and that's why he was a young man. He was in his early 40s. And he was the one who taught me how to work on this machine that I was supposed to produce the parts. And there was a cabinet with tools. And every time I came, I opened up the drawer and I took out my tools in order to work with the machine. From time to time, I found in my cabinet a sandwich, which was either with jam or with margarine. He never told me that he put it there, but I knew it was him. And maybe that saved my life. Maybe that prolonged my life. And that was, of course, a wonderful thing that even a German did.
Do you remember his name?
His name was Hans, but I don't know his last name.
Hans.
Yeah. He was a very liberal person. He used to talk to me, used to ask me questions about my family, from where I came, and then always used to tell me the war will over soon. And he says, I would like to adopt you as my son after the war. So I said to myself, if I will survive, you are a nice guy, but I don't have anything to do with you Germans. Mm-hmm. So that was a nice thing. That was the only time that a human kind of an act was done to me.
Interesting. So not every German was a monster.
No, but I would say the majority of them were.
And when I asked you if there was a moment of tenderness for you, you did not give me an example of another Jew being tender to you.
Yes, there was this Rabbi Yitzchak from Hungary. He was the one who encouraged me all the time, and we worked together in the same factory, and he used to come over to me and ask me to pray with him together. And he gave me a lot of courage, a lot of faith, and that was the time when I felt tenderness.
Mm-hmm. And one more question on this line. You know, even if you're at a house where someone has died and the family is in mourning, very often there will still be smiles, even laughter. In Auschwitz, were there times that people smiled and laughed?
Not that I remember.
Never, right?
Never. Never.
And then one day, it does come to an end.
Yeah.
And Herschel Schachter, who became a very famous rabbi in America, is there.
Yeah.
Take our audience through that moment from behind your eyes. What did you see? What did you think? What did you feel?
On April 11, 1945, the Germans started to escape, and 2 American tanks and a jeep broke through the gate, came into the camp, and on the jeep was Rabbi Herschel Schachter. He came into our barrack because we were very sick. We couldn't move around anymore.
Where were you at the time?
I was in barrack 66, the children's barrack,
Lying there?
lying on the wooden plank.
Okay. And do you see him enter the room?
Yes.
What do you think?
I saw a soldier coming in, and I noticed that he had on his lapel, he had the 10 Commandments, which was a wonder to me, because here we are oppressed and everything Jewish is thrown away, and here a soldier comes in with on his lapel with that. And also he spoke to us in Yiddish, and he said, "Jiddische Kinder sind frei." Jewish children, you are free, which was amazing, and everybody was crying.
Did you cry?
Yes, I did.
How long?
Oh, for a while.
Uh-huh. And when was the first time you could smile again?
Well, I was very sick then. I was taken immediately to a makeshift hospital, and at least 2 or 3 weeks I was hovering between life and death. And then Rabbi Schachter used to come almost every day to visit me. He used to talk to me and encourage me. So that's when I started to feel like a human being again, and smiling and talking and so on.
You didn't feel like a human being in the camp.
No, no.
Instead, you felt like?
I felt like I'm nothing, because that's what they wanted you to feel. Although inside, I had this pride of being Jewish, and remembered all the details from my home, which gave me a lot of courage.
So you write a book that you entitled "The Failure of Man and the Enigma of God's Silence," and the cover has a picture of the railroad tracks leading into Auschwitz.
Yes.
During your time in Auschwitz, and then the Death March, and then you're in Buchenwald. Actually, you go from where to Buchenwald?
I went from Auschwitz to Plaszow,
Yes,
and from Plaszow to Bolkenheim,
yes.
and from Bolkenheim to Buchenwald.
Okay. Are you angry at God during this time?
There were times I was angry. I didn't understand what happened, because I know I came from a family My ancestors were all observant Jews, all very much devoted to God and to the Jewish people. And I didn't understand why we are in this situation. So I was angry. I just didn't feel that we deserve all this. We are supposed to be the chosen people. And here we are chosen to suffer.
So did you say to yourself, there is no God?
No, I didn't say there is no God, but I didn't understand why this is happening. I know because I studied before I was taken to the camps. I studied a lot, and I knew that what the Bible says, that there will be a time when God is going to hide his countenance, and I understood that, and I was wondering why, because we did not deserve this.
Have you ever come to an answer for yourself?
Not a final answer.
But still talk about it for a moment. How do you live with it? Where did you go with it?
There were ups and downs. There were times that I said to myself, there cannot be God if a thing like this happens. On the other hand, I say to myself, look, you survived. There must have been somebody who protected you. So there was this fight within me. But I guess my upbringing, my home, my education, all this weighed to the side of remaining a faithful Jew.
A faithful Jew.
Yes.
You are now part of the Orthodox community, correct?
Right.
And are you fairly an observant Jew?
Yes.
And do you feel that in your way you have maintained a relationship to God?
Yes, I feel so. Especially after what happened with the establishment of the State of Israel. That gave me a big boost.
Yes.
A big boost.
A big boost, right. So let's go there now.
Yeah.
You do survive. You're one of the children of Buchenwald. I already told the audience, and you did speak about this before. Ultimately, you go on a boat, Yaldei Buchenwald. You stop and you pick up more passengers, and you have more passengers. About how many people were on the boat altogether when it was flooded?
1,100.
1,100 on a boat that was meant for?
500-600.
Okay. And you have to stay below deck most of the day?
During the daytime, we had to stay below deck because there were British reconnaissance planes and ships, in the Mediterranean, so they wouldn't, discover us.
Yes, again, this was what was known as Aliyah Bet, an illegal running of the British blockade. The British had put quotas on how many Jews could come into Palestine.
Right.
Even though it understood totally what the Jews of Europe had just endured. It knew all about the Holocaust, but because of the politics and its attempt to in some way appease the Arab population,
right.
It put severe quotas on the number of Jews and survivors who could come in to Palestine. And
right.
you became part of a group that was going to run the British blockade.
Right.
And in the evening you said you would come up on deck.
For fresh air, and we went up in groups because 1,100 couldn't go up at one time. Also, the food and the water was rationed because we didn't know how long the journey will take. And also, they weren't able to put too much weight on the ship, so everything had to be worked out like that. But we were happy that we are.
Were you happy?
Yes.
You weren't angry there?
No. Not at all.
You understood what you were doing?
Yes, we understood what we were doing, and we were going towards a goal, to the land of Israel, to the land of our fathers. And also, I was looking forward to see my brother.
Who was in Palestine?
Who was in Palestine.
Okay. And then, what was it like the first time you saw the shore off in the distance?
We were jumping from joy. It was a feeling that I could not say that I ever had again. This was a unique kind of a feeling.
And what we should imagine is not you at this age on the boat, but you as a 16, 17-year-old on the boat. And roughly, the other people on the boat, were they your age, older, what?
They were all teenagers.
All teenagers.
Yes.
Did you get along?
Yes.
Okay. So here we have a ship with 1,100 teenagers, and you can see the goal is Palestine, and you're going to get there, and then what happens?
And then suddenly, on the 10th day, 4 British Navy ships surrounded our ship.
Are you down below at this time?
Yeah.
So you don't see it,
No, we don't see it.
but you learn about it.
But we hear the announcement on the loudspeaker. They announce on the loudspeaker, you are trying to get into Palestine illegally. Follow us.
Was that frightening for you?
Well, we were concerned. I mean, after the Shoah, nothing was frightening us anymore.
How honest. Yes. Okay.
No.
All right. So there was it was almost philosophical.
Right,
All right, this is the next thing.
right. Now, also, we were actually trained on the ship how to fight the British in case they attack us. So when it actually came to the point when the British said that, when they surrounded us, the commander of the ship, who was a Haganah person, decided not to do anything. He told us, don't do anything, because he felt responsible. Here are 1,100 orphans that survived the Holocaust. He didn't want anything to happen to them.
He was smart.
So that's what he told
Okay.
us.
And the boat is taken to?
The boat is taken to Haifa. There we were forcefully taken off and put on trucks.
What do you mean forcefully?
Forcefully, they were taking us because we didn't know where they're taking us, so we were
You resisted?
resisting.
They took you by truck?
They took us by truck
To?
with heavy guards to Atlit. That's a prisoner camp.
Okay. You're not frightened still.
No,
Are you annoyed?
sure we are annoyed. We're very angry that after what we went through, the British should do a thing like this.
Yes.
The Magna Carta country, they should do a thing like this to us. Instead of helping us, they are resisting us.
And now, do you have any friends in this group, or are you still feeling in some way alone?
I still don't have any friends.
So everybody is there on their own in one big group.
Right.
And you go to Atlit.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Atlit is a military camp. Each one has their own cot-like. The food wasn't bad. Everything was much better. It wasn't like a concentration
Of
camp,
course.
but still we were surrounded by barbed wires and tower guards and all that, and we weren't free, and we didn't know what's going to happen. We weren't afraid that they're going to shoot us or kill us, but we didn't know what was going to happen.
Did any of you worry that you'd be sent back to Europe?
Yes, we thought that might happen. That's why we were worried about it.
All right, now tell the story of your brother.
So the Jewish agency had access to the camp, and they came in and registered all those that arrived and wrote down also the names of relatives that live in Palestine. And so I gave them the name of my brother and the address, because one thing that my brother, who was with me together in Plaszow, was constantly reminding me was the address of my brother in Jerusalem. And so,
The brother in Plaszow did not survive.
no,
Okay. The name of the brother in Palestine was?
Shmuel Tzvi,
Shmuel Tzvi. So you know Shmuel Tzvi's name and his address.
right,
And you give it to the Jewish agency.
Jewish agency. At night, they had a program, Chipush Krovim, looking for relatives. And a landsman of mine heard the announcement that Moshe Lifshitz, at that time my name was Lifshitz, Moshe Lifshitz arrived, and he is an athlete. He ran over to my brother, he also lived in Jerusalem, and he told him, and my brother said, impossible. It can't be, because he was a baby. He was 8 years old when I left. How can it be that he survived of all of them? Anyway, the next morning, my brother and this Landsman, Yitzhak Friedman, came to Atlit, and they were standing at the gate because nobody was allowed to go in. And they saw somebody walking, and they said to him, please go and look for Moshe Avital. Moshe Lifshitz, I'm sorry. I'm so used to
I know.
the name already. Somebody comes into the barrack, and he yells, who is Moshe Lifshitz? I said, I am. He said, your brother is waiting for you at the gate.
Is this all in Yiddish?
Yeah. And I couldn't believe it. So I ran to the gate, and I immediately recognized him because when he left, he was already 18 years old. And also, he sent pictures before the war, but I changed completely. First of all, I was young, and I had pairs at home, and now I was completely different. So he didn't believe me that I'm his brother. So he started to ask me all kinds of questions, what the names of the parents were, and the brothers and sisters, and what they did, and the neighbors and everything. Then finally he realized that it's me, and both of us cried very much, both from joy and from sadness.
You told me he did not live very long.
No.
Died of a broken heart.
Right.
What happened to his parents and his siblings and
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
Tell us how you get out of Atlit.
We were there for a couple of months. In the middle of the night, I was sleeping. Somebody woke me up. It was shaking me. Said, get up, we are taking you out of here. So everybody got up, and they took us out. They cut the barbed wire. They tied up the guards, and there was a big mountain there. They took us behind the mountain, and there were trucks waiting for us. They loaded us on these trucks, and they had lists, and they distributed us in kibbutzim, and I was taken to Kibbutz Yavne in the Negev in the south.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
Was this a Haganah operation?
Yes.
Okay.
It was actually Yitzhak Rabin, Zichrono Livracha. He was in charge of this commando unit.
Wow. Did you ever meet him?
I met him, and I also corresponded with him.
What you said happened to you was you became part of the Haganah.
Later on.
Tell us that story. What age are you when you become part of the Haganah?
17.
Later on. Okay. Is this when you were in the Negev or somewhere else?
No. After what happened in Atlit, the British declared curfew for 4 days, and they were looking for us. They couldn't find us, and then they gave up. From there, I was transferred to a Youth Aliyah village in Emek Yisrael, in a moshav called Deir Yassin.
Is this in the Galilee?
No, it's Lower Galilee. It's near Nahalal.
Okay.
Not far from Nahalal. There was a youth village there, and they were all Holocaust survivors, the teenagers. And there we studied a half a day, and a half a day we worked in agriculture. Each family of the Moshavnikim adopted a person.
What was the name of your family?
It was Mitzmacher, Tzvi Mitzmacher.
Did you like them enough?
Very much.
And you learned and you worked in the fields.
Right.
Did you learn Hebrew easily?
Yes, because I had a good basis from home yet.
Yeah, you were very good in language, so that was a gift you had.
Yes.
Were you good in the field?
Very good.
Okay.
They were very happy with me. I milked the cows, and I fed the chickens, and I cut the wheat, and I did everything. I was riding on horses, you name it.
Were you happy?
Yes.
It was a nice time for you.
It was a very nice time. First of all, it was a very nice youth group. We all went through the same things. And the people were nice to us. And we saw that we have a future. And it gave us a lot of confidence.
Absolutely. By the way, are you observant at this point in time?
Oh, yes.
You stay an observant Jew.
Yes.
Was this an observant Moshav?
Yes, it was a Pola Mizrahi.
I see. Do you think you were put there because of that?
Right,
Okay. So the style of Judaism is one that you're comfortable with?
right. It's
Okay.
modern Orthodoxy.
Okay. I'm still asking you, how do you end up in the Haganah?
Okay, so I have to give a little preface.
Please.
The British appointed for every moshav and every kibbutz like a sheriff, like a policeman who would take care of law and order. In Hebrew, they call them notrim, noter,
Yes.
a watchman or whatever it's called. So there was a station in Sde Yaakov that was a Jewish man who worked with the British, and he had in that station all kinds of weapons and so on. But secretly, all these Notrim were members of the Haganah. And if anything happens, they went and they did whatever the Haganah asked them to do. So he came
The Haganah then is the
underground,
Israeli army,
yes.
army of the Jews, of the Yishuv.
Right. He came to us, to our youth group, and he spoke to us about the Haganah, and he said, we are looking for volunteers who wants to volunteer to the Haganah. 4 of us volunteered
Why did you volunteer?
because I felt that I have to contribute not only in agriculture, I have to contribute to the upbuilding of the country also, as far as security is concerned, and as far as the establishment of a state.
Okay. You had your health back by this time.
Oh yes,
Were you a strong young boy?
I was very strong.
Okay. And you were happy to become part of the effort here to protect the Yishuv
Right,
and also to help establish the State of Israel.
right.
And I want to be clear, at this point in time, do you and your friends have a sense that there will become a formal state, Jewish state, or were you simply there to make sure that those of you who were living in Palestine in the Yishuv at that time would be safe? Which was it?
We knew that we are going towards establishing a
Okay.
state.
Do you know who David Ben-Gurion is at that point in time?
Yes,
Okay. Is he a hero?
yes.
Rabin, is he a hero?
At that time, I didn't know about Rabin.
Too early yet.
Yes.
Okay. So you join the Haganah. Do you leave the Moshav or you do it from within the Moshav?
No, what happened was that this notaire took us into his office, and we had to swear. There was a pistol and a Tanakh, and we had to swear that we are going to give our lives if necessary and all that and so on. And he told us that in a week we are going to go for training. We were taken to a forest called Ya'ar Landau in the Galilee. And there was a camp established with tents. And there were 60 of us, 60 boys from the various places that gathered there. And Tzvi Chera, who later on became Tzvi Tzur, the chief of staff of the Israeli army, he was the commander of this project. For 2 months, they trained us with all kinds of weapons, all kinds of field behavior, in war and all
yes.
that. We even studied how to find ourselves according to the stars.
Do you think the British knew about this camp?
No,
Okay.
they didn't, because officially it was supposed to be a sports camp.
Aha.
And that's what it was. I remember that once we went into Emek Yisrael in the fields in order to practice, and from a distance we saw a patrol of the British, so we were hiding in the cornfield.
Okay. So the weeks are over, and then what happens?
The weeks are over. I come back, and when my 2 years are up, from 1945 to 1947, I went to Jerusalem, because my brother was living there, because you could be in Aliyah Noar and the Youth Aliyah only 2 years. So, but while I'm there was the Yishuv wanted to establish a new settlement called Birya in the Lower Galilee. And the British got a hold of it, and they came and they put siege to this new kibbutz. So the members of the Haganah from the entire area in the Galil came and put siege on the British. And I was one of those among them, because they took from the area, they took all the Haganah members.
So what was your role?
Just to be there in order to pressure the British.
Were you carrying a weapon?
No, we weren't allowed to, because if you carried weapons, they will arrest you.
So
What we carried was those sticks. It was a shepherd's stick like. It was called kapap. Kraf panim el panim. In other words, you were fighting face to face with a stick.
was it effective?
It was very effective.
What did the British do?
Well, after a while, they left, and the kibbutz was established.
Okay. I want you to try to remember back then.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the British, and how did you feel about the Arabs of Palestine?
The British I hated, because they did so much damage to the Jewish people. The Arabs, I wasn't sure then, because I didn't come too much in contact yet. Later on, I came in contact in Yerushalayim when I was fighting there. But we were told to be careful of them, because you never know what they were going to do. They would stab you or whatever. But I didn't have any specific opinion then.
And you had no immediate contact with Arabs?
No.
Okay. One of the big controversies in this period of Israeli Jewish history has to deal with the underground armies in general.
Right.
There was the Haganah, there was the
Irgun
Irgun
and
led
the Lehi.
by Begin, and there was Lehi by Stern, and then by Yitzhak Shamir.
Right.
And at one point, there was a saison, a season of war
Right, I know.
between the Haganah and the Likud.
Right.
Haganah and the Irgun.
Yeah.
That was before you got there, correct?
No,
It was during your time.
during my time.
You're there during the saison.
Right.
What was your attitude towards the Irgun?
I felt very uncomfortable that a Jew can do a thing like this to another Jew.
You were not happy with the saison.
No, not at all. And I'll give you an example of something that happened later. I was already in the Israeli army. It was, we were stationed in Deir Yassin.
You were in Deir Yassin?
After the
Irgun event?
the Haganah took it over.
Okay.
So we were stationed there, and when the Altalena arrived,
Yes.
there were rumors that the Irgun is going to go to Jerusalem and establish a separate state in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And the orders were that if anybody comes, to shoot them,
Meaning a Jew.
a Jew. Our
I
unit,
want to make sure our audience understands.
yes,
This is 1947.
1947.
And
48, I'm sorry, it's 48.
early 48.
Yeah.
No, it's August. Is it not August 48?
No, it was before the establishment of the
Right.
state.
So it had. Okay. So it's early 1948,
Yeah,
and the Israelis who are the Jews who are fighting to establish a Jewish state need arms.
right,
Menachem Begin is head of the Irgun, and he arranges for a ship to come in bearing enormous amount of arms. It's called the Altalena. At the same time, David Ben-Gurion, who's head of the Jewish agency in the yeshiva at the time, is concerned because there are rumors and stories that Begin wants to replace him, wants to do a coup
d'etat.
and take over control of the yeshuv, and that Begin is bringing the arms in, not really for the Haganah and the emerging Tzahal, the Israeli army, But Begin was going to use these arms from the Altalena and give them to the Irgun to fight and destroy the Haganah. And then he would become the head of the infant emerging Jewish state. Begin writes that he never intended to do this, that his intention was to hand over virtually all of the arms to Ben-Gurion and the Haganah, but he insisted that a certain number go also to his Irgun.
That was an agreement.
Which he wanted to incorporate into the Haganah, and there was an agreement made between the Haganah and the Irgun over these armaments.
Right.
At the last moment, Ben-Gurion just doesn't believe Begin and orders Yitzhak Rabin to fire on the Altalena.
Right.
Rabin follows the orders. Rabin sinks the Altalena. Begin is on the Altalena at the time. They have to throw him overboard, cursing all the way down as he hits the water. And ultimately, the Haganah sink the Altalena, and all the arms that are on the Altalena, virtually all of them, are lost to the Haganah. That's the story of the Altalena. It is one of the, by the way, one of the most tragic moments in Jewish history.
Right.
And from everything I've learned, even Ben-Gurion later on acknowledged it was a mistake on his part, but he was obsessed by Begin at the time, petrified that Begin was going to do a coup d'etat. And that's the context of the story. You're now going to tell us, where were you and what, from your eyes, how did you experience the event of the Altalena?
So we were stationed in Deir Yassin.
And again, I have to make sure everybody understands Deir Yassin. Deir Yassin may be the most controversial place in all of pre-war Palestine. Deir Yassin was an Arab village. It overlooked the road
to
Jerusalem, basically from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And it was crucial that the Jews of Palestine keep that road open. It was only one of many Arab villages overlooking this road, but it was a village from which there was serious Arab fire on any Jewish convoy that went on this road. And that ultimately, the Irgun and the Haganah that were working together at this point in time divided up activities and targets. The Irgun is given the target of Deir Yassin. Begin's story is that he had a truck with a loudspeaker that was to go through Deir Yassin, telling all the civilians of Deir Yassin that it's going to be a target and that all of the civilians should leave.
Yeah.
There's a story here that the truck ended up in a ditch and couldn't get there, and there's a question to whether there ever was sufficient warning. But Begin's attitude was he was never there to kill civilians. Ultimately, the Irgun does come in, and they take the city of Deir Yassin, the village of Deir Yassin, which puts up a fight in its own defense, and many of the Arabs in Deir Yassin are killed.
Right.
Later on, the story goes that it wasn't just Arab soldiers who were killed, but that the Irgun had also killed civilians. Begin disputes that, but this becomes the legend of Deir Yassin.
Yeah.
And the Arabs use Deir Yassin as their battle cry, sort of their last of the Alamo for the Arab world. And they would say anytime they were in a fight with the Jews after that, remember Deir Yassin.
Right.
After Deir Yassin, this event, the Haganah comes in to replace and to control Deir Yassin, so Arabs won't come back and start again shooting at the road.
Exactly.
You're in the group of Haganah that goes to Deir Yassin. Now, first of all, how do you feel about my description? Do you want to correct from your perspective anything I've said?
No, whatever you said is true. The only thing that I know what happened was that the Irgun did not purposely kill any civilians.
Absolutely.
So that's the only.
And you knew that at the time.
Yeah.
By the way, there were Haganah people who were not as charitable in their assessment of the Irgun as you.
I know that.
You know that.
I know that.
There were many Irgun people, especially during these years.
Yes.
Irgun and Haganah were enemies,
Yes.
even after they fought side by side.
Yeah, there was a time when all the three undergrounds united. It was called Tnuat HaMeri.
Correct.
And at that time, when the King David Hotel was bombed, that was the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another event, we're not going to do it. Every one of these events is a story in and of itself.
Right.
But my interest is how you view, from your perspective, these events which you're living through. You are living history for us, Moshe.
Okay.
So tell me.
So I was stationed in Deir Yassin when this thing with Altalena happened. And we got an order that if any one of the Irgun people are trying to break through, because we had a machsom, a blockade there on the road to Jerusalem, we have to shoot them. I stepped forward and I said to my commander, I said, I'm a Holocaust survivor. I didn't come to Israel to kill Jews. I will never lift a hand against a Jew. You can court-martial me, you can do anything you want, but I will never do that. Didn't do anything to me, let it go.
Good for you. You're a real gibor.
So,
as we move towards May 14th, 1948, the British are leaving.
Yes.
And a partition plan has been approved by the United Nations, affirming the partition, basically, of the Peel Commission in 1938, that also was affirming the decision of the League of Nations to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine. And the Arab world was saying,
no,
over my dead body. And now you understand, you're going to be fighting 5 to 7 combined Arab nations once the State of Israel is declared. What are you feeling? What happens?
We were not scared.
You weren't?
No, because we were very well trained.
But you were outnumbered, overwhelmingly outnumbered.
True, but our spirit was very high. And especially the Holocaust survivors felt that they are fighting for our people that died in the Holocaust. And also we knew that this is our last stand, that if we are going to lose this time, God forbid that'll be the end of the Jewish people. So we had to do more than usual. And everybody did. Now, there's a fact. There were 6,000 casualties during the War of Liberation. Among them were 1,500 Holocaust survivors, a very high percentage, because we volunteered to go to the most dangerous places. And that's what happened.
Where did you go?
So from Deir Yassin, I was sent to Ramat Rachel. And Ramat Rachel, I was in the trenches on May 14, 1948, when Ben-Gurion announced the establishment of the state. We heard it on the radio.
How did it feel? What did it feel like?
It was such an elation. And we were dancing in the trenches. But we knew that the war is going to start. The next day, which was Shabbat, the next day, an Egyptian column came up the road from Hebron, near the Kibbutz, Ramat Rachel, and they attacked us. Now, we had very little weapons. We only had, as a matter of fact, we had a few Italian rifles from the First World War, some Sten guns, which the Haganah produced, and many times they got stuck. One mortar of 2-inch, and a few pistols, and some hand grenades, and Molotov cocktails. And here a whole regiment of Egyptians are approaching us. And the commandant, our commander, says, don't shoot, because we had to preserve our ammunition until they are really on top of you. And so we are waiting in the trenches. They are approaching us, and they are walking, standing up, like if they are going for a stroll. And just before they came to the trenches, we got the order, Eish, fire. And we fired. Many of them were killed right away, and they started to run back. Their officers didn't go ahead of them. They went in the back of them. They were sending them. And that was the big difference between the Israeli army and the Egyptian or any Arab army, because the Jewish officers went ahead of the soldiers and gave them the courage. And Ramat Rachel passed hands an entire week. One day it was in our hands, one day it was in their hands. We counter-attacked them, we took it over. They bombarded the place. The cows were killed, the chickens were killed. The women and children were evacuated before. And we had quite a few casualties.
Were you ever injured?
Just a scratch from a bullet.
You were just very lucky.
Yeah,
But you did have to kill.
definitely.
Was that hard to do?
It was hard. It was hard.
But you had no choice.
No. Abal hargacha hashkem lahargo. If somebody tries to kill you,
You're obligated to
Yes.
stop him, even if it means taking his life.
right?
Yes. How many days are you fighting?
An entire week. And finally, it remained in our hands. If you go to Ramat Rachel, to Kibbutz Ramat Rachel, which is now a beautiful kibbutz again, and also they have a catering place there, you will see the old dining room has bullet holes on the walls, yet they left it as a reminder.
What happens after that week for you?
I was all over Jerusalem. Our unit conquered a number of places. We conquered the area where the Knesset is, where Har Herzl is, where Yad Vashem is. All these places our unit conquered.
The Israeli army tried very hard. This, I should say, the Haganah. It's not really the Israeli army.
Right.
It's the Israeli army in formation. The Haganah tried very hard to win Jerusalem, the old city.
Right.
And at one point, there was going to be a ceasefire imposed.
Right.
And everybody knew when the ceasefire was happening. And wherever you were, that's where a line would be drawn, a ceasefire line. And the Jewish people tried very hard to push into what was then going to be Jordan. It's really toward the Jordan Valley, towards the Jordan River, into the old city. I mean, we all know what happened, but describe how you're feeling and what happens.
I was sent for an officer's course, which was in Kfar Yona near Netanya. And when the armistice for the 10 days that happened, we were sent back to Jerusalem. And this was after the Czechs sent some armament, especially a very heavy machine gun, which was called Beza. And I became an expert on these machine guns because I was trained for it. So they sent me to near the old city in order to give cover for the units that will be going into the old city, which the Palmach did actually. And
The Palmach was an elite division of the Haganah.
right. And
That was also Yitzhak Rabin.
yeah, we were on top of the building. It was called APAC, Anglo-Palestine Bank. It was a tall building near the post office. And from there, we could see the old city. And from there, we were shooting.
You were a sniper of sorts.
Well, more than a sniper, because this is a machine gun,
You had a machine gun.
a heavy machine gun. That was from Czechoslovakia.
And it was Czechoslovakia that provided most of the arms.
Right.
Not America.
No.
Not France.
Nobody.
It was Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia. Yeah.
As you look back on it, by the way, now, how do you view, and when I say back, it's not simply to 48, as you view Israeli history, and I say to you, Menachem Begin, What do you feel? Who was he to you?
Oh, he was a special person. As a matter of fact, I corresponded with him. I have a few letters. He wrote me a letter 3 days before he died.
Was Begin a hero?
Yes. But I'll tell you, when he made peace with Egypt, which was a tremendous thing, of course, but he didn't finish the job about the Palestinians. That part, Sadat would have given in certain things at that time because he wanted very much the Sinai to get back. So that was an opportunity to get from Sadat whatever he could.
And you feel you didn't get enough?
No.
Interesting. And how do you feel about Ben Gurion? Is he a hero?
Sure he is. Without him, the state wouldn't be on now. Ben Gurion actually emulated a great deal Jabotinsky. There were a lot of things that Ben Gurion did which Jabotinsky spoke about.
Begin?
No, not Begin.
Ben
Ben
Gurion?
Gurion. Ben Gurion emulated Jabotinsky even though he hated him. But that's how it was.
And how did you feel about that?
Well, I
Were
thought,
you a Jabotinsky fan?
yes,
Yes.
a great deal because he was the only leader that I know that I have read that he was the one who urged the Jews in Europe to leave, to go to Palestine, even if they have to have 1 million Jews attacking Palestine and go there.
And now how did you feel about Begin?
Begin was a very tender person, very tender. He had a heart.
He also had a Jewish neshama,
a
yes?
Jewish neshama, and also he was not greedy like some of the other leaders are or were. He was a humble person, very humble.
Very idealistic.
Right.
Yes. He was a real committed Jew. He was in it to be a man of service.
Right.
I want to take a few others. Golda Meir.
Golda Meir had a lot credit. I mean, she did a lot of things.
Did you respect her?
I respected her until the moment when the Yom Kippur War came,
I understand.
that she did not do what she was supposed to do.
Moshe Dayan.
As a soldier, I admired him, but not as a person.
I understand. Yitzhak Rabin.
Yitzhak Rabin, I admired as a soldier and as a person that devoted his life to the Jewish state, but I felt that there was certain weakness in him.
What weakness?
He sometimes he gave in to certain pressure which some other leaders wouldn't do, especially to Paris. He was, this conflict between him and Paris.
Shimon Peres.
Shimon Peres all the time. That was a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. You were opposed to Oslo?
Yes.
Yes. Moshe Sharet.
Moshe Sharet was not only a politician, but also a ideologue and a man of culture, very much.
Mm-hmm. Ezer Weizmann.
Ezer Weizmann was a flamboyant boy.
Yes. He created the Israeli Air Force.
Air Force, right.
And ultimately would one day be president of the state of Israel.
Yeah.
Yes, a flamboyant figure, a nice way of saying it. And Chaim Weizmann.
Chaim Weizmann has also a lot of credit for the Jewish people, what he did. But there were times that I felt that he was leaning too much to the British.
Interesting. All right. Here you are, still a kid, fighting for the establishment of the Jewish state, a survivor who is now creating the first sovereign Jewish polity since the days of the Maccabees in the 2nd century BCE. At the same time, there are people saying the Jews are stealing the land, that even though the Jews endured the Holocaust, and even though they have a connection to the land, the reality is there's a people already there. Ari Shavit writes a book, My Promised Land. I don't know if you read it or not.
Yeah, I know
but
about
the thesis of the book is that the early chalutzim and the early political types almost were blind. They had to be blind to the fact that there was another people in this land, and that while it was important for the state of Israel to become a Jewish homeland, especially after the Shoah, Shavit says we basically stole the land from another people and we destroyed another people in order to become the state of Israel. You were there. To what extent do you feel that the Jew of well, it's unfair to ask you before you got there, 45, 48, 50, in that first 5-year period, that in some way we were stealing someone's land, and that the Palestinian has a claim to this land which the Jew is not honest about?
Okay. I think the problem is that everybody starts from now. They're talking about now and not what happened before. Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, belongs to the Jewish people from time immemorial. The Bible is full of it. I can give you hundreds of quotes. We were exiled forcefully. We returned. We were exiled forcefully. And we were promised by God that we are going to return. The Jewish people made a mistake that for 2,000 years they didn't try to come back. As a matter of fact, I just finished another book which is being published now in Israel, and in it I'm talking about that some people say that the Holocaust came because the Jews didn't see the signs of the Balfour Declaration, of the different dates that came along that promised for the Jews to return to their land. It's also unfair to say the Palestinians. There were never a people that's called Palestine. I'm a Palestinian. I have an identity card that says Palestine. So there was no such country. There were never a country or a people that called Palestine. The enemies of Israel, they were the ones who invented it. It was Israel who agreed to accept the partition plan, which was a minuscule part of Israel. But the Arabs declared war. The Arabs have 22 states. The Jews have one little state. What do they want from the Jewish people? Now, Israel is giving full citizenship with all the rights to the Arabs that are living inside the state of Israel. And they would also allow many of the Arabs to stay in Judea and Samaria if they would be peaceful. But if they are fighting them, they have all rights to defend themselves. And how can they give up territory from this small piece? Look what happened in Gaza. It became a base of terrorism. And if God forbid, if the West Bank ever is given up, you and I will not be able to fly to Ben Gurion Airport because they will shoot down the planes. So it's not a simple thing. It's time that the world recognizes that there were wars before, that were exchange of various populations. After the First World War, Greeks and Turks and all kinds of people were exchanged. Look what the Czechs did after the Second World War and the Sudetenland. They took 3.5 million Germans and they gave them 4 hours and they gave them trucks and they put them into Germany because they had enough of their persecution that they did to them during the Second World War. Who heard of such a thing? So I say that there has to be another solution besides Transjordan, or the other side of the Jordan, where King Abdullah is now there. There are 60% of them are Palestinians. There is already a Palestinian state there. So we have one Palestinian state in Gaza and one Palestinian state in Transjordan. So leave this little land, only 28% of the total Eretz Israel for the Jews.
What would you do with the Arab population on the West Bank?
What I would do is, if you chose to live in peace, you can stay. If not, here we'll pay for your property. You can go to any Arab country you want. These are your brothers, your culture, your language, your religion, everything. But I definitely would not remain in the borders of Auschwitz, as Abba Ibn said.
And that's the danger.
That's the danger. Because we cannot afford anymore to lose our people. I'm not talking only from the Holocaust point of view. I'm talking from the culture and religion and everything. Where are we going to put in more Jews that have to come into the land of Israel to find a haven? Where are they going to go?
So you've given us a sense of the sweep of your early life. By the way, you got to come back. We've got to talk more about your later life. But you've helped us understand from the death march to your fighting for the Haganah and the Tzahal in the early days of the State of Israel. As you look back at this, and thank heaven you lived a long, good life. You've devoted your life to education. You've written, how many books have you written?
16.
16 books. You've made a major contribution to Jewish life. But as you look back at that period of time, beginning in the 40s into the early 50s, what's it say to you about Jewish transcendence that you, who were on that death march, only 400 of you survived out of 10,000, and then you're fighting in the War of Independence, and the State of Israel is established, and for all of the tourists we have now, there's a vibrant, exciting, humane, democratic jewel of a state called the State of Israel. How do you feel about it all? And, what's it say inside your soul?
I feel that it's a miracle. It's something that never happened in history, that a people returned to their land after so many years, and they took a desolate land and they made it bloom. It's not easy for me to say that this is, in a way, compensation You can't say that because 6 million people that were sacrificed, especially my own family, that is a compensation. But when I see the state of Israel, I must say that God was behind it. That this is something that he did, that he must have realized that what happened is something that is a watershed. And to see the young people, the way the army, the way people, the way the soldiers are ready to sacrifice their lives for defending the country, and all the innovations, and it's just amazing. You don't find anything like this in any parts of history.
You have children in Israel?
I have a daughter and 4 grandchildren. They
live,
all
where do they live?
in Yerushalayim.
Isn't that fabulous?
Yeah.
Isn't that fabulous?
As a matter of fact, we are going now next week. One of our grandsons is getting married.
Oh, Mazal Tov.
Thank you.
That is wonderful. Moshe, by the way,
Yeah.
how did you change your name from Lipschitz to Avital?
Okay. My father was born in Poland. His name was Duft. When he was very young, his family moved to Czechoslovakia. They never bothered to get Czech citizenship. And the Czech people were very liberal and they never bothered anybody. When Czechoslovakia was torn apart and the Hungarians occupied our area, the first thing they did, they demanded citizens' papers to prove that the people are citizens. My father could not prove because he was born in Poland. And my mother and all of us 11 children were born in Czechoslovakia. So we switched over to our mother's maiden name, Lipschitz, which we were able to produce the documents. My father went into hiding. Later on, there was no difference whether you had papers or not, everybody was taken. After the war, I always wanted to change back to my father's last name, Duft. So I said to myself, if I am already changing it, I want to make a Hebrew name out of it. So Duft means D-E-W, Tal. And Avi means my father, so Avital is my father,
Yofi,
Duft.
Yofi. You're fabulous, my friend.
Thank you.
It's been an honor to spend time with you and to be able to share you with the L'chaim audience. But I need you to promise me this is just chapter 1. You'll come back and we'll do chapter 2. Fair
Okay.
enough?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm pleased to meet you and to have a friend like you.
Thank you, my friend. There it is, Moshe Avital. Avital. Do my father. My father's, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous choice. Moshe Avital, who was among the children on the Yaldei Buchenwald, who became part of the Haganah, fought in Israel's War of Independence. He also fought in the 56 Sinai campaign, that's chapter 2. And he is also a Jewish philosopher and author, and he has made a major contribution to Jewish life. It was an honor to be able to present him to you. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Any thoughts or comments you may have to anything that Moshe Avital had to say, please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I love reading your comments. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life.
a presentation of Jewish Education in Media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.